Hello, friends, and welcome to Learning from Experience video series. My name is Max, and in this video series, I'm going to share some knowledge management techniques that I use to help me conceptualize human experience and convert it into knowledge. And we're going to use a fun cybersecurity example. Quick agenda for today. I'll go over the goal, provide you with some motivation, hopefully, define some terms to make sure folks understand what I'm saying, outline what the learning process looks like, and then share some tools that I use to create the experience as well as to document it and then store it in a knowledge base. The goal is pretty simple. It's to show how to learn from experience used in a practical example. So some fun facts, my favorite. Experiential learning is what we're ultimately going towards here. It's ancient's been around since Plato, Aristotle, more recently been used in graduate level business programs like MBA school, where seasoned professionals come back to the school and share experiences, what decisions they've made, what happened, did it work out, did it not work out. But I would say over the last 10 to 15 maybe years, you see it more permeating in STEM fields as well. So even in science, technology, mathematics, experiential learning has been shown to be used. Even I've went through it in my STEM program. Our brains love it, apparently, probably because it's more immersive, it's more fun, it's more energetic. You get to actually do stuff and see results of it, right? Experiential learning usually used to solve net new problems. Relative to on-the-job training, where like the task is well defined and the person knows what the answer is, and then just simply teaches it to a new employee. Experiential learning, the answer isn't known. The methods of work might not be known. So you bring a group of people, have them talk to one another, give them the problem, and then hopefully they'll get to some sort of an answer, some sort of a solution, and then they'll use, which is the fourth bullet point there, is they'll reflect on that experience to kind of see, number one, what is the output? Does it solve our problem? Does it not solve the problem? And then also, do our methods of work, do they work? Do they not work? What can we do better as a team next time, right? This type of learning is used to bridge the skill gap pretty frequently, uh, mainly because it can be used in parallel with like work. So you can continue to be productive, but learn at the same time. So like work becomes just a giant learning exercise, and the employees in a traditional business setting aren't taken out of a work environment, sent to some sort of training. In the meantime, the work stops, and then they come back and apply the new skills. Here, they can continue to learn while they're doing something productive, still have output, um, and that allows for them to be productive, but also for them to continue to learn, which is very critical in our environment today, right? Because everything is constantly changing, evolving, especially in the IT industry. So consistent learning is very, very critical. Boosts engagement and retention, specifically relating to learning or absorbing of knowledge and material, probably because people go through it hands on. It engages more senses. And there are studies out there that show that people do learn better in this method rather than traditional school, where it's more of reading a textbook and then, taking exams to show that you've understood the material in it. And then last but not least is supports lifelong learning, just because life is an experience. So while here we're going to apply it in a more technical setting, we can apply it in anything we do in life. Look back at our experiences, see what we've done well, what some things we could do better next time, right? And hopefully learn from it. So some quick definitions just to make sure we're standardized in our verbiage. Experience. When I say experience, I really just mean events, actions, or situations that happen to a person. For example, traveling to a country, like on a vacation, that's an experience. Going to a restaurant, that's an experience. In our case, conducting a penetration test, that will be an experience. Experiential learning specifically is a process where people gain knowledge and skills through direct experience and reflection on that experience. So there's two critical components. You have to go through like the experience of some kind, and then look back at it and actually learn to understand whatever it is, to conceptualize the experience, whatever you want to learn. So it could be the methods of work, or just the experience. You can use it to reflect back on a vacation and see what your preferences are, etc. Knowledge that I'll use pretty frequently here, it's understanding gained from experience analysis and sharing. So in our case, we'll focus more on this, the experience component of it. But analysis would be like if I went and collected a bunch of data and did some statistical analysis to draw inference that would allow me to gain knowledge. And then sharing, partially what I do here, kind of create a video. You know, they say the best way to learn is to teach. So here I am learning, right? Or continuing to learn. And then last key term here that I wanted to highlight is knowledge base. And that's just a central place where curated knowledge is stored. And the keyword there is curated. So imagine this, and this is the best metaphor I can come up with. Let's say I want to cook a delicious Thanksgiving meal, and I don't know anything about cooking. So I go to the library, and it's full of knowledge on different topics, different subjects. I find some cookbooks, I flip through them, find some Thanksgiving meals. I do like a value analysis and pick one recipe. I go cook it, and it's delicious. It's wonderful. So I've learned that that recipe works, right? And also that I can execute it and make it, taste delicious. So then I take that recipe and I store it in my personal cookbook, like my own little cubby hole or just a folder. And as I filled that folder with different recipes that I have used and I've tried and I've had some level of success, that recipe book is what a knowledge base is. It's very tailored, it's very specific, it's curated, in this case, based on maybe whether I succeeded or not, based on whether I can, execute that cooking exercise very cheaply or within budget, on time, etc. But the keyword there is that becomes a knowledge base, and the advantage of it is it's saves me a lot of time in like the future. I don't have to go to the library again to search through a bunch of books, right? So keyword there's it or phrase saves me time in the long term. And some simple examples are like recipe book, SharePoint sites. In our case, we're going to use Google Drive folder. So it does not have to be a very complex technology. I know there's a lot of hype about AI and different tools out there, but I always find that the simpler the better. And the really the key ingredient then is how you curate the knowledge. Like the more specific, the more tailored, the formatting of it, the best formatting, whatever that means, is what's going to determine the quality of the knowledge base. So learning process, just to kind of highlight at a very high level. And before I go into anything dealing with processes, I always start with this quote. If you can't describe what you're doing as a process, you don't know what you're doing. And it's by father of quality management, Edward Deming. And it just means that if you've conceptualized that experience or whatever it is that you're doing, and you can represent it as like a sequence of steps, then you probably know what you're doing pretty well. Otherwise, in my lifetime, I always get that, oh, I can feel it, but I can't put my finger on it. That's how I know I don't really understand like what is it that I'm doing. So I just sit around and create process diagrams, I guess, which I do sometimes. But to practice what I preach at a high level, so what does the process look like, right? So you have an input, which is just experience. Any type of experience could work. I do some learning, and then out comes some knowledge. Improvement and understanding is what we mean in this case, right? But seems very simple, not to shortchange anyone. Let me break down this step of learning a little bit further. Like, what does that really mean? How does it really work, right? And for this, imagine a vacation. Imagine I go on a vacation, and the first step I do is capture like the experience. On a vacation, I take pictures, I might journal sometimes. More modern ways of capturing experiences is through video, etc., right? But we can also capture experience in other ways. For example, I buy plane tickets and that purchasing data is stored in a database. I can review it at a later time in my bank statements. And I can also use that as a way to capture like the travel aspect of my experience, right? So when we go back and reflect on the experience, which is the second step, we have all these mechanisms to recollect, to remember, to kind of like reminisce, which we typically do with like pictures of vacations. But I can also take it a step further and say, well, I remember going on this vacation and we did all of these things. What did I like? What did I not like? What worked out? What didn't work out? And while we don't typically do it that way, we could record those things down. It's kind of like things Max liked on a vacation, things Max didn't like on a vacation. And then in that case, I'm documenting my own lessons learned. Like, what did I learn from my vacation experience besides, the fact that I liked it, hopefully. The benefit of that is I can understand my own preferences best. So then I can like take those lessons learned and incorporate them into my planning process for like the next vacation. So my next vacation is I only get to do things I really like doing and I'm really good at and that make me, the happiest I can be on a vacation, right? But that's really it in a nutshell. We capture the experience, we look back at it, reflect it, kind of assess it, conceptualize it, I guess is the more technical term. We hopefully document it, and then we can use that documentation, those knowledge artifacts is what I'll call it more broadly, to help us be more effective, more efficient in the future. And we will kind of go through that, all of those steps in the subsequent videos. We'll break it down just one at a time, or we'll go through an actual experience of, hacking the system in this case, a very simple one just for demo purposes. I'll show some of the techniques I used to document it, and then we'll talk through how I kind of model it out and how do I structure a knowledge base and ultimately like capture those lessons learned, if you will. But some of the tools that I use for that is going to be Hack the Box. Nope, not thanks for watching yet. So Hack the Box, I'm not going to go too much into it, but it's just a website, allows you to set up and hack different systems with different vulnerabilities in an ethical and responsible manner. Just for the record, nobody's hacking any actual system, so this is not any illegal activities involved, just to be clear. But it's a website that provides us with virtual machines that have different vulnerabilities, and we can learn different techniques, different methods, and cybersecurity professionals use this to sharpen up their skills. Kali Linux, that's what I'm going to be using. It's going to be running on VMware. I'm not going to go through setting up Kali Linux, but as you can see, it's just a standard distribution of Linux that has a lot of penetration tools already that come with it. So we don't have to install anything. And for the demo purposes, I'm not going to show anything special. It's just going to be default settings, default tools, etc. Right? But it's there. Plenty of videos on how to install VMware and Kali Linux out there available on YouTube. Cherry Tree, I like to think of this as kind of like your photo camera, if you will. It's just almost like a notepad. You can type stuff in, take notes. More interestingly, if you're looking to like document or take pictures, like actual pictures, you can take screenshots, right? We can copy it, we can paste it, we can take additional notes on it, whatever we like. And I'll kind of show you how at least I use it as we go through the experience in a subsequent video. And then last but not least, we got Draw.io and Google Drive. So Draw.io is just a simple modeling tool, which I'll kind of show you examples of, but allows us to create actual diagrams. And this will be the knowledge artifacts. So like I said, we can have the lessons learned repository. We can write things out like in a Word document and store that. We can have pictures. In this case, I'm going to have processes, and you'll kind of see later on that as we structure the experience itself, we can actually get to like a high level of automation, but also efficiency. So for this, we'll use a diagramming tool, and you'll see me kind of playing around with more shapes in the future, but it's just very convenient. We can, create shapes, connect them to show some sort of logic. We can add comments like this. And of course, I have it like pre-modeled, but it'll be like something like this. We can zoom in, etc., right? And we'll dive more into it later on and become a little bit more familiar with it. Again, it's free though, so very useful, very similar to Microsoft Visio. And last but not least, our knowledge base, where we kind of like store everything. It's just going to be a Google Drive. Doesn't require advanced tools. It's something like this. It's just a folder. In this case, I'm going to call it Penetration Testing KB, that I'm going to use to kind of like as I go through different experiences and learn ultimately. I have just one folder for experiences. In this case, I already kind of like did one just for demo purposes. And it's just a way to separate and organize actual like content, which are the knowledge artifacts here that you saw. These are the Draw.io diagrams. So each one represents like different techniques that I've learned from the experience. Kind of like this one is one. I think this one is like valid or looking into like port 21, which is FTP, which we'll see in the video. But it does not have to be very sophisticated, just a simple folder. And then the only thing that I'll mention here before we finish the presentation. Is nice thing about having a very structured approach is you can actually track your learning, so you can get more, not just learn, but also get more efficient and effective at learning. So you can think of ways to accelerate your learning rate and do it in a very trackable and very systematic type of manner, very, very efficient. In this case, all I did is just document that, okay, I learned, this one skill. Here's the artifact that I created or modified. Here's the date. Here's where that like learning experience came from. So you can imagine if I learn over a period of a couple of months, I can actually start seeing what sources I'm learning from, what type of learning, how many things I learned per period of time, like a week, let's say, what seems to give me the most learning versus, is it hack the box? Maybe after a while, uh, the learning will kind of like taper off. So maybe I need to like look into a different website to gain different, different type of knowledge, etc. But a simple tracker in Excel is all you need, and it's a simple way for me to evaluate my learning rate. That's pretty much it. Now we get to the thanks for watching, and in subsequent videos, we're actually going to go through the experience and then talk a little bit about modeling, knowledge bases, frameworks, and how to like organize it all and make it somewhat understandable, hopefully, and fun. Right. That's all I got. Thanks for watching.